Alright, so are you looking for your next new favorite city? Are you looking for something to escape from the various amazing landscape and stunning natural wonders that New Zealand has to offer? Well, New Zealand also have some pretty cool cities too. We have some fantastic coastal cities, some cities dotted with volcanoes, and we even have a city that has a geothermal park as its main central city park. So knowing which are the best and biggest cities of New Zealand is a good way to understand a little bit of the geography of the country. So we thought that today we'd go over the 13, or probably we're just going to stop around 10 best cities that New Zealand has to offer. And we'll go in descending order from the biggest in terms of population to the smallest, but it's not going to be the smallest, it's going to be the smallest of our top 10.
Less big.
Yes, to the less biggest. The first city to mention when it comes down to the biggest city in New Zealand is obviously the most obvious of obviousest ones, and that's Auckland. With 1.7 million inhabitants, this is by far the largest city of New Zealand. It is also the biggest port of entry of New Zealand, with the Auckland Airport located in the Manukau suburb of Auckland. And this is basically the most visited city in the country, as pretty much every tourist arrives there. There is a huge choice of national park there, with bushland kind of national park.
Regional parks.
Yeah, regional park and beachland kind of regional parks as well. But there is also some amazing islands getaway to be had in the Hauraki Gulf, which is the big gulf that is what you see when you are facing and looking at the harbour. So yeah, Auckland has all the convenience of being the biggest city of New Zealand, but it also has some epic things to do. Laura, what are your favorite things to do in Auckland?
Okay, so speaking of the Hauraki Gulf, one of the best islands to visit, I think if you're a first-time visitor, is to go to Rangitoto Island. It's only about a 30-minute ferry trip to get there, but once you get there, it has an amazing forest, a cool hike up to a crater of an extinct or dormant volcano. It's one of the youngest volcanoes in Auckland, and it's just really awesome to explore, has lava caves, all that good stuff. Another really cool place in Auckland is the Auckland Domain, which is a very large park really close to the city centre. You can access it pretty much a short walk from the city centre. And it's full of different things to see. There's the Auckland Museum there. There's also winter gardens, so like a massive greenhouse with amazing plants in there. There's also some bushwalks in the centre of the city, which is pretty cool as well. So yeah, checking out the Auckland Domain is definitely one of the top things to do. And then if you're looking for more city vibes, just visiting the different streets like Queen Street, High Street, checking out all their different cafes, shops, all that sort of thing. I mean, it's a city. Often in New Zealand, its main attractions aren't really the cities, aren't really shopping, aren't really doing all that sort of, going to maybe the theatre, that sort of thing. So having the time to go and do that in Auckland, well, you're in the biggest city to go and do all that good stuff. So why not do it in Auckland?
All right, and because it's a city, let's talk coffee and food. My favorite coffee is on High Street. That's a small cafe called The Shelf. And my favorite dessert is at Oko, which is right in the city centre, which makes amazing chocolatey desserts. Alright, so while you guys continue with some more questions, let's move on to the next city on our list, and we're talking about New Zealand's capital city. That's right, Wellington is not the largest city of New Zealand, and Auckland is not the capital of New Zealand. Two big confusions that people often have. Anyway, so Wellington is the capital of New Zealand. It has 442,000 inhabitants, and it is often dubbed as the coolest little capital. And for good reason. It has a really cool city vibe. There's always something happening in Wellington, and it's surrounded by a wine district, by amazing coastline, and some stunning mountains. There is heaps of creativity to be found in Wellington, so it's often a popular choice for travelers to extend their stay a little bit and spend a few days to explore the city. So Laura, what are some of your favorite things to do in Wellington?
My favorite thing to do by far is to go to Zealandia.
I thought that would be be the Te Papa Museum.
No,
All right, continue.
it's right in. It's very easy to access from the city centre. They do free shuttles from the eyesight, for example. And this is a huge wildlife sort of sanctuary. They have a predator-proof fence around it, and the wildlife in New Zealand is pretty much birds. So it's sort of like a more sort of free environment for the birds, and yeah, it's just really awesome to be able to go around and you see different feeding stations with native birds sort of, you know, doing their thing, and it's an amazing place to go and learn more about the flora and fauna of New Zealand. Another awesome thing to do and must do is the Te Papa Museum.
My favorite.
So this is the largest national museum of New Zealand. So everything to do with New Zealand in terms of Maori culture, volcanic landscapes, the social history, the natural history, all that good stuff is covered at the Te Papa Museum. So it's definitely worth visiting, and it's free to visit. And then finally, if you're looking for a road trip, then going to the Wairarapa region, particularly to the Putangarua Pinnacles and Cape Palliser, is a really cool road trip to see some really cool pinnacle formations, as well as a cool lighthouse where there's often a seal colony there in the correct months. So yeah, go check that out too.
And Sherry, before I'm closing this one, shouts Weta Workshop, which is great as well. It's the studio that does a lot of the special effects for movies such as The Lord of the Rings, so it's worth visiting too. Next on our list, we have Christchurch at 389,300 people at time of recording. That may change. Somebody may actually just pop a baby by the time you're seeing this video. Anyway, this is the third largest city in New Zealand, and Christchurch is the South Island's largest cities. It is a very good city if you are looking for employment in New Zealand. It's teeming with work opportunities. So if you are visiting New Zealand on a working holiday visa, for example, it is a fantastic place to base yourself on. It also has amazing artwork, fantastic murals everywhere around the city, and it has fantastic view of the Port Hills. If you are into surfing, there is also some many enticing surfing spot around the city, and it is a great spot for South Island getaways. Laura, what are your favorite things to do in Christchurch?
I think the number one thing to do in Christchurch is to definitely check out the Botanic Gardens there. There's lots to see. There's lots of different themes to the gardens, and you know, even if you go there once, there's probably going to be something that you've missed, so it's always worth returning. There's always something to see at the Botanic Gardens, and it's a free thing to do, so definitely worth doing. And right next door is the Canterbury Museum. Actually, at the time of recording, it is closed for redevelopment, but it is supposed to reopen. So
it reopens soon.
And then another cool thing to do is actually taking a walk along the Avon River. So there's really like a lot of different sightseeing stuff you can do along there.
You can see a punter.
You can see people punting on the Avon River. You can also see there's various different memorials. There's like a really cool memorial that's actually the earthquake memorial, but it's like just a really cool sort of architectural steps going towards the Avon River. There's also the Kate Shepherd Memorial, the Bridge of Remembrance. So there's really some sort of like grand architecture and sculpture to see as you're going down the Avon River. So that's definitely worth doing as well. And then Christchurch actually has some really cool day trips to do from the city. One of the best ones to do, in our opinion, would be to go to Akaroa. Over there, they have amazing cruises.
Is that my opinion too?
Oh, it definitely is. You talk about it all the time. So, they have wildlife cruises where you can see the world's smallest dolphins and the world's smallest penguins. The town itself is French-inspired, so there's a lot of French-themed things to do there.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting town to go check out, and that definitely makes a good day, or at least maybe 2-day road trip from Christchurch. So that's another cool thing to do there too.
All right. Where are we on?
Sherry says, isn't there a memorial with chairs in Christchurch? Well, actually, not anymore. There used to be an earthquake memorial with all these white chairs in Christchurch, but that has been basically removed, and the guy that made it was just like, does anybody want to take a chair home? It's basically, that's how that happened.
Respectfully removed. That's what has happened. Yeah. But there's still, there's still some remnants from that earthquake. There is the museum there that talks about the earthquake.
Quake City.
Yeah, Quake City.
Yeah.
But there is also, the fact that the cathedral, despite the fact the earthquake is
about 13 years old.
Yeah, more than a decade old. It's still not finished, right? So there is, you can still see a couple of those kind of things, but most of it has been completely rebuilt. And it wasn't. I was actually quite surprised how good it was. Like when we went back to Christchurch a couple of weeks ago, how easy it was to navigate through the city and everything. It's actually easier to navigate through Christchurch than it is through Auckland and Wellington. And everything.
Yeah.
Wellington is.
So I think like my takeaway for what Christchurch is at the moment is more it's like its heritage buildings are still being rebuilt because they're slowly they're trying to also preserve the heritage of some of those buildings, so it's a slow process. But in terms of like the rebuild of all the the modern buildings, the streets, that sort of thing, like everything is looking pretty good now in Christchurch. So it's really, like Robin says, easy to navigate around. And
I love Christchurch.
Christchurch is looking great.
In fact, I do like Christchurch so much that our segment today is Photo Story. So looking at Laura taking photos right here is a bit of a lie, because today the photo is literally a selfie I just took on my phone. So if you follow us on Patreon, you may have seen it before, but I really do love the fact that Christchurch has so many murals everywhere. It just makes the city looks really fantastic. So yeah, I wanted to show that a little bit, just to show you that Christchurch is still it's actually a really vibrant city. Everybody find Christchurch being like so boring, but no, Christchurch is actually really cool. So even a small empty plot of land in between two buildings in the city center has been kind of arranged with a bit of fake grass. There is a coffee cart just behind me right here that I'm taking, actually in front of it, basically where my phone is pointing, the side you don't see. There is a nice little coffee cart over there that had a queue on there actually, so it must be a really good one. I didn't have time to actually shop for coffees because I was running around the city because somebody forgot to pack me a shirt and I was about to go bare-chested in my suit, and that was not necessarily the best thing to do. Therefore, I was running around trying to buy a shirt last minute. Anyway, aside from that,
is this a photo story or a photo rant?
Well, this is why I usually pack the bags. For once, she was in charge of packing the bag. God damn it!
I wanted you to look like a Chippendales stripper.
I should have done just bare chested with the
just
tie.
The tie and the pants, and that's it.
Anyway, so Christchurch City is very vibrant. It's really cool. It does look super bright. It's really fun city to kind of even just spend some time within the city center. And one of the great things is that you're seeing me right here walking around. Christchurch City has been, I feel, rebuilt with pedestrians in mind. And the city center is not clogged with cars, with having to cross the streets, all the time and waiting for crossing and everything, like it is happening in Auckland quite a lot. And in Wellington to a certain extent, but a bit less than Auckland. But Auckland, you really feel like you are disturbing cars when you kind of walk and gander around the city. But in Christchurch, that's not the case. In Christchurch, you genuinely are able to kind of just walk around and actually just enjoy the city and not being too disturbed by cars. And I really enjoyed that. I kind of like, gallivanting around the city is not often something that you get to do in New Zealand. I feel like it's quite often just basically one main street in the middle, and then you kind of sometimes have to cross and everything. You don't really have a city experience, and it's something that you get a lot in Europe, especially at the moment, which are really pushing cars away from the city centers. So Christchurch did a really great job with very easy to find and easy to use parkings. Really not too expensive, and a lot of the parkings actually are, you get 4 hours for free, and it's pretty good. Like, it's not the case in Auckland or in Wellington, so I really, really did like Christchurch City, and especially the city centre. I know it's maybe a hot take or a controversial opinion, but Christchurch, in my opinion,
it's back, baby!
It's back, baby! You rock, Christchurch, I love you! There you go. Okay, let's move on to the next city on our list, and a fourth on the list of the biggest cities in New Zealand is Hamilton with 179,900 people. 1,079, 900. Yeah, something like that.
1,079. No.
179,900. There you go.
Why was that so hard to say?
I have no idea. Anyway, situated on the banks of the mighty Waikato River, Hamilton is the center or the epicenter of the life in the Waikato region. The Hamilton Gardens is usually a big draw card, as well as the nightlife of the city, as it has quite a big student hub in there. It is a great hub to visit some places such as Raglan and the Hobbiton and Waitomo area. And yeah, if you're planning on studying in New Zealand, Hamilton is probably on top of your list. Laura, what are your favorite things to do in Hamilton?
Okay, there's an obvious one here, and I think everybody should do it, and that is the Hamilton Gardens. So these are, they get a lot of hype, but deservedly so. The Hamilton Gardens, there's lots of different themed gardens, and they're all really immaculate, really creative. It's just awesome. So yeah, and it's free to visit as well. So we always like free things to do in the cities. So
we do.
So Hamilton Gardens, absolutely #1 thing to do. Make sure you don't miss that. Another thing to do is, the Waikato River is a sort of like a big, really important part of Hamilton. And what they do really well in Hamilton is that they have lots of really cool bike trails alongside the river. So, hiring a bike, they have really cool, well-graded trails that you can do in many different points. So you can do a bit of research and see if you want to just do an easy cycle from the city, or if you want to go somewhere where there's a little bit more wilderness. There's lots of options there. And then finally, another pretty obvious city thing to do, but I'm going to say it everywhere anyway, is to go to the Waikato Museum. It's a really cool museum where there's a lot of emphasis on some Maori artifacts and the Maori history there. So that's usually a really interesting aspect for people that are, especially international travellers, that want to learn more about the indigenous culture of New Zealand. Then the Waikato Museum is a really cool place to go check that out.
There you go. Hamilton is awesome. Alright, let's continue talking about some of the biggest cities of New Zealand. And number 5 on our list, we have Tauranga. Tauranga is home to 158,300 people. And it is a great coastal city located on the northern end of New Zealand, and it is often a hub for people wanting to work in the horticultural industry, so doing fruit picking, like anything to do with stone fruits or with kiwi fruit. It is also a fantastic hub to explore some of the northern kind of part of the northern end of New Zealand. A great hub to go to the Coromandel to explore, all of the Bay of Plenty, all of that the Bay of Plenty has to offer, and even going all the way to the East Cape. It is a great place to live, and it's also another city with a lot of great murals. Laura, what are your favorite things to do in Tauranga?
Okay, my favorite thing to do is certainly to go for a walk up the mount, which is located at the very end of Mount Maunganui Beach, and from there you can get some really cool views of Tauranga and Mount Maunganui, so that's a really cool thing to do. And something nearby that's quite underrated is Leisure Island. So this is a small island that you can actually access straight off the beach. Just after you've done your walk up the mount, you come back down, walk along the beach for a little bit, and there's a small island that you can just access straight away, and from there you can get some more excellent views of the more of the mount itself and the beach, so it's a different perspective. Finally, another really cool thing to do in the area would be to go to the Mamako Forest Park.
Sorry about the pronunciation, guys.
So over there they have some really cool short bushwalks that you can do. There's a really small one to a waterfall, but then you can also get yourself up high into the hills to get some awesome views from there as well. So if you're more into outdoorsy things, there's certainly scope for that from Tauranga.
Alright, so while you guys are coming up with some more questions about traveling in New Zealand, we'll keep going down that list of awesome cities to visit in New Zealand. And again, they are ranked in order of population. So number 6, we have Napier and Hastings. Yes, combined together. And they are home to 148,000 people. So Napier and Hastings are surrounded by vineyards and very close to awesome beaches, bike rides and walks. So they are super popular cities for traveler looking for wines and also epic adventures. And if you're looking for tasting delicious food, it is also a fantastic place to visit. But this is more the realm and domain of Laura. What are your favorite things to do in Napier and Hastings, Laura?
Okay, first thing I would say is the wine region there is really, really like a big popular thing to do. So the wine region's mainly between Napier and Hastings. So there's a lot of driving tours as well as self-guided cycling tours that you can do between the vineyards, and they're very well connected by cycle trails. So doing a day of that, going to different wineries, tasting different wines at cellar doors, etc., is definitely a highlight of Napier and Hastings. Another really cool thing to do is to do a bit of a road trip to Cape Kidnappers. There's a couple of ways to enjoy Cape Kidnappers. The easiest way would be to take a tour with overland safaris, which do a driving tour to see the Cape Kidnappers gannet colony, and that's the easiest way to approach it, because otherwise you have to do about a 5-hour hike at low tide along the beaches to go to Cape Kidnappers. So that's certainly not for everyone. So, but that's a free way to go and check out the beautiful gannet colony there at Cape Kidnappers. And let's think of another one to do quickly.
The Art Deco tour?
The Art Deco
Of
tours.
course.
Yes. So Napier is famous for its Art Deco architecture. It was rebuilt in that style after it had a devastating earthquake quite a few years ago, many years ago, in fact. So it was rebuilt in this very vibrant way, and now you can do Art Deco tours with the Art Deco Trust, which do walking tours around the city. That's probably the easiest and cheapest one to do, but there's also driving Art Deco tours that you can choose from as well. And yeah, they'll tell you about the different history of the different things that you're seeing, about the history of the earthquake, and also, yeah, just sort of pointing out the significance or things about the architecture you might have not figured out on your own.
Okay, so should we move on to the next city on our list? So continuing with the biggest cities of New Zealand, the next one is Dunedin with 130,400 people. Again, somebody may have had a baby by the time you're watching this video, so don't hold that number against us. Anyway, Dunedin is a student city and has a lot to do in terms of wildlife spotting. So there is the beautiful Otago Peninsula. It also has the world's steepest street, the Otago Central Rail Trail. But most importantly, the city has a bit of a European style kind of vibe. It is Scottish, if I'm correct.
Yes,
is that correct? So
Scottish,
it has a
yeah.
Scottish heritage. So a lot of the architecture is Scottish inspired. So it's a pretty cool city to spend time on. Laura, what are your 3 favorite things to do in Dunedin?
Okay, definitely checking out the Otago Peninsula, which is a very easy short drive or a nice wildlife tour drive. Get one of the tours to take you there. And often we say it's a good idea to take a tour to the Otago Peninsula because certain tours have access to private conservation land where you can see amazing things like yellow-eyed penguins, New Zealand sea lions, fur seals, albatross. Oh, there's so many amazing things to see on the Otago Peninsula. So there's different ways to either do it self-guided or on a guided tour, but either way, check it out. Make sure you spend a bit of time on the Otago Peninsula, and they have a big castle there as well. Cool. Another thing, it's kind of hard to decide which museum is better. So there's 2 really awesome museums in Dunedin. There's the Otago Museum and the Toitu Settlers Museum. Both are free, both are really amazing. If you have the time, definitely check out both of them.
If you have to only check one, pick the Toitu. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. So yeah, they're 2 really awesome museums to check out. And then finally, I would say Dunedin's a good opportunity to do one of the brewery tours of New Zealand. So New Zealand's really into its beer, and Speight's is one of the biggest beer brands in New Zealand. So if you want to check out their Speight's brewery tour, along with some tastings and that sort of thing, then...
Do you really taste Speight's, or you just skirl Speight's?
I'm sure some people have tasted it, actually
Okay.
tasted something at
Interesting.
some point. So yeah, that's a really cool thing to do. Really accessible from the city centre. So that's definitely a city activity that's, you know, quite unique to Dunedin.
Okay, so let's continue with our coverage of the biggest cities of New Zealand, and we are down to number 9 with the town of Whangarei, which is cracking it at the 100,000 people, 100,500 people. It is the northernmost city on the list that we're going to be covering today, and it has a subtropical climate, and it also has a really good location because it's relatively close to Auckland with all the Auckland facilities that you have. So it's kind of a prime choice for picking where to stay, right? If you want to have a decent climate, have all the conveniences of Auckland without having the inconveniences of Auckland, and have stunning attractions such as the Whangarei Falls and the Whangarei Heads that Laura is probably going to mention. Well, right now, Laura, what are
Yeah.
your favorite things to do in Whangarei?
Whangarei Falls. Yeah, so a really cool waterfall that is probably the easiest waterfall to access in New Zealand. There's a car park, you walk for 2 seconds, and then you're on top of Whangarei Falls, which is pretty huge. I think it's about 30 meters. It's really quite a large waterfall. And then you can do there's a walk down to different viewpoints, so you can experience it from different angles, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's Whangarei Falls. Another really cool thing to do would be to go to Whangarei Heads. Specifically, the Mount Manaia walk is really awesome. It takes you, up through the forest, through a kauri forest, which are some of the largest trees in New Zealand. Takes you up to a really magnificent viewpoint of the surrounding coastal areas and lots of sort of mountains as well. So that's a really cool one to get outdoors and experience a bit of nature. And then finally, speaking of nature, there's 2 really cool sort of wildlife attractions in Whangarei. They're located literally side by side to each
Yep.
other. It's Kiwi North and the Whangarei Whangarei Rescue Centre for Birds. Something like that. It has a very long, complicated name that's not great for marketing, but it's right next door to Kiwi North. So Kiwi North is like
It's so true.
yeah. It's Kiwi North is like its main attraction there is that it has like a nocturnal kiwi house, so you can see, like, they've made the conditions so that it's, nighttime for the kiwi birds during the daytime, so you can see.
So you can get in, it's a very dark room, but your eyes adjust and you get to see the
Yeah,
kiwi
so you
birds
can see
behaving.
kiwi
It's pretty cool.
birds there. They also have some pretty creepy things there as well. They have like geckos, insects, which is pretty cool to look at, and tuatara as well. But then next door they have basically it's a bird like wildlife hospital, so they have various aviaries for the birds as they are in rehabilitation, and then they're released into the wild afterwards. But it is it's an opportunity to see different native birds up close, and some of them are pretty happy to be there. Even ones that they've released keep coming back, and they have a talking tui. Don't know if they still have a talking tui, but they did have a talking tui that literally repeats what people say and things. So yeah, it's
fun.
It's a bit wacky, it's a bit crazy, but that's another cool thing to do in Whangarei.
Are we squeezing in a number 10, or are we just skipping it and be like, okay,
Let's
we don't have time?
round it off with a nice number 10.
All right, so number 10 on our list, we have Palmerston North, 90,400 people. It is very often overlooked by travelers, which are driving right through on the way between Tauranga National Park and Wellington, but it's a fantastic hub to explore the beautiful Manawatu region and the Manawatu Gorge. It's actually extremely affordable as well to visit, and a great place to settle a little bit if you want to work and play as a backpacker. Laura, what are your 3 favorite things to do in Palmerston North? And we're running out of time, so don't expand too long.
Okay, first up, go to Wild Base Recovery Centre, another one of these rehabilitation centres for native birds, which is located right in the city centre near Victoria Park. Another cool place is the National Rugby Museum right next door to Te Manawa Museum, 2 museums in one. Rugby museum you have to pay, but the Ten Manawa Museum is free, and everybody loves a good museum, and Palmerston North has its own. And then finally go to the square in the middle of Palmerston North. It's a cool park, it's funky, it's you know, contemporary, it's got a big clock. Get some photos.
Here you go. Wrapping it up. Okay, so that was the 10 biggest cities in New Zealand. There are actually much more awesome cities to visit, and you can check them out with a bit of an introduction like we just did right here on the link in the description below, where we have about 15, 16 of them. And we even included Queenstown, which is definitely not a city, but yeah, we just know that everybody wants to hear about Queenstown. So yeah, check out the link in the description below, and yeah, let's go back to the live show.
Let's.